What's going on, guys? I am Toxic Jordan. Welcome back to the channel. So today we are going to be taking a pretty in-depth look at what I think are basically all of the best characters that you can bring into the Festival of Battles event. So I have made like a pretty comprehensive tier list, including basically every single unit that I think is capable of getting through that phase 50, as well as quite a big sprinkling of other units that I actually am not super confident would be able to clear the event, but they are still going to be considerably better than a lot of other units in the game, and will at least still, be useful for you guys getting to maybe new heights in the event, or just like some extra fill-in units if you are a newer player and you don't have, all of the best units in the game. So before we get into the actual tier list that I made, first I wanted to give you guys a resource to be able to kind of fend for yourself if you wanted to do some of your own additional research, or if you're not interested in the rest of what I have to say for the video, that's totally fine. So over here on the fandom website, the Dokkan wiki here, just go ahead and head over to guides, go down to team help, and then all skill effects. When you get to this page here, you're going to scroll down. Now, obviously, we do want to focus on stacking characters. Ignore these raised attack and defense ones, because these are just the in-game uses for them. So this is going to include every single unit in the game that like raises attack or defense for one turn type of things, which is definitely not what we are focused in on here. So scroll all the way down here. Now, there's these special ones that they just use for the wiki that aren't technically terms they use in-game, but this is what we're looking for here. So stacking attack and stacking defense. Open those tabs up, and it's going to show you all of the units at the top here. The very first part of the units are going to be infinite stackers. This is what we're looking for. Units that can constantly and consistently do these attack raises and or defense raises, right? Throughout the entirety of the fight. So this is everything that's on attack raises, all the way down through here, and then you'll want to stop once you get to this point, because these are the ones that have, like 9-turn limitations, 5-turn limitations, things like that, right? So we don't want to be looking at those units. So yeah, onto here, and then same exact thing for the stack defense. So you just want the infinite stackers. Once you get down here to the quintuple stackers, then you would, it wouldn't be wise to use those units. Okay, yeah, so that's basically where I pulled all the information and looked through like all the character kits that I looked through in order to create the tier list. So now let's go ahead and take a look at it. So this is the tier list that I have put together. So I guess just to kind of briefly give some more explanation to kind of everything here, I'm not going to waste the time going through every single one of these characters' kits. I feel like that would just be a little bit excessive. I will actually show off some team builds that I've put together, just some various ideas that I've come up with here that, we can probably, see, like, you could probably get some cool inspiration for ways to construct your team based out of this massive pool of units here. Okay, so but to kind of further break this down, the very top tier here, I have deemed like this is like the Z tier units, right? These 5 just stand above the rest as far as being the best for this event. So basically, with any of these 5 units, the rule is if you're building a team and they're on the leader skill, put them on the team. Absolutely put them on the team. These units, these first 4 right here are just so individually helpful because they have the ability to stack their attack and defense to just astronomically higher numbers than basically every other unit in the game. They, like, the 7th anniversary LRs mainly, are going to be super capable of tanking those really tough boss super attacks that you're going to be facing off against in, like, the very end here, right, where you're off against like these 12 million, 17 million, 24 million supers. They are going to be able to actually tank against those if you are prioritizing building them up throughout the fight. And then obviously the transformations for the Vegito and Gogeta are just absolutely insane, and kind of honestly, in my opinion, needed in order to clear these final couple of stages here, right? And without them, I think it would be next to impossible right now to be able to get through these, but I suppose there is a possibility. And then for the Super Saiyan 3 Goku, he's just going to be providing, I mean, he is an infinite stacker that's going to be getting to really impressive numbers as well. But on top of that, him having the guaranteed crits and stuff is going to be very nice, providing that extra damage for you for those phases where you might not have, you might have gotten unlucky with type disadvantage or things like that in the turns prior, and then, you don't have that many charges left and you don't want to get KO'd. The amount of damage this guy's going to be providing for you later on in the fight once he's stacked up a lot is going to be insane. And then on top of that, he is providing some massive defense support and damage reduction support for the rest of the team as well, so that's going to be super helpful. So moving down to this second tier here, I have just deemed these units that are going to be still like very, very viable for this event, almost as good as the tier 1 up here, but just like maybe a step down for one reason or another, right? Oh, by the way, this is not the physical Path to Power Kid Goku. I just didn't have an asset for the brand new AGL Dokkan Fest Kid Goku that's releasing for Saiyan Day. So yeah, that unit is who I'm considering here. But yeah, that unit's kit is absolutely insane. He is an attack and defense stacker as well, so he is going to be looking, I would say, pretty comparable number-wise in that event to, like, the Int Namek Goku. But I think that the one thing that the two of them kind of suffer is that they don't have, like, amazing skill effects to go along with it, right? Like, the Super Saiyan 4s here have, you know, Guard, they've got a Scouter, they have the extra active skill attack that's going to do a lot of damage for you. They have, you know, the chance to counter upon transformation. They get the really big damage reduction and stuff. The LR Gods have a lot of the same. And then obviously we went over the utility of like those other three characters there. But yeah, so these two, while they're going to have insane numbers, they don't really have those same abilities in their kit. Same thing, I guess you could say, with the AGL Vegeta. He doesn't really have those abilities, but he is going to be pretty impressive on the offensive and defensive front, right? And then Glorio I just threw here. He is obviously the first unit on the list that is not an infinite stacker. He is only going to be stacking stats within the turn. But there's a few things to consider with this character. One, the event has been beaten with him on the team. Not only with him on the team, but him as the leader and the friend leader, right? Like, his team specifically has beaten this event. There are people who have gotten through the final phase 50 using him. And at the end of the video, when I show you the team builds, I will show you an example of a team build that I believe has, like, is what you'd basically have to use with the Glorio team in order to get through this. But yeah, so he could be a very viable unit, and even though he isn't infinitely stacking, he does get up to really, really impressive defense numbers within the turn, especially, I mean, there obviously is some RNG with it, but especially if you are able to get off a lot of super attacks. Then that defense is just going to be going through the roof, as well as him providing some decent damage help for you as well. And then on top of all of that, he is the best support type unit in the game, right? And while this is an event that you kind of want to prioritize having stacking units on rotation to allow them to stack up as much as possible, it kind of is an advantage that for his team specifically, he wants to be in slot 3. So you're going to suffer a little bit less with having to float off your stackers because there's specific units you want to prioritize keeping on rotation. He will allow you to keep your stackers on rotation a little bit better while providing that major support to them, right? So yeah, Glorio definitely a very good unit to consider taking in here. Okay, so then the next tier down that we've got here, I put the Namek Frieza, and then the Tech Gogeta here. So the Namek Frieza is still going to be both an offense and defense stacker. Not going to be quite as good as Goku, mainly because Goku, based on his like slot placement, has his kit is mainly built around offensive power, and then just because this is such a long event, he does have the ability to just purely stack his defense all the way up to where it needs to be, whereas Frieza, it kind of works the opposite, where he's got a kit based around defensive viability, and then if you were to stack him long enough, I don't think that you could even get his attack quite as high, where like, you know, eventually, basically, I feel like his attack is probably going to be fizzling out. Whereas his defense numbers look so good from the start, just because he's got all that damage reduction in his kit, that he doesn't really need the extra defense that you're going to be getting for him throughout time. So eventually you're going to find that this Frieza is, you know, turns into like the Super Saiyan 4s or the LR Gods, where the defense numbers just get so massive on top of the extra protection in the kit that he can't really be touched. But then the problem is going to be his offense is not raising as quickly as like maybe the Namek Goku would, so then the extra damage he's providing per turn won't be quite as great. I suppose it's one thing to note, though, that there are a lot of like Goku family enemies, a lot of Pure Saiyan enemies and stuff, so he's going to get a lot of crits from like the guaranteed crit portion of his passive, so that could be helpful for the damage. But I think ultimately, towards the end of the fight, he probably will be dying off damage-wise for you. Okay, so now we could say a similar thing about the tech gods here. They are still going to be a very, very good unit. They are infinitely stacking attack and defense before they transform. But then once you do eventually transform them, they're going to have a massive fizzle out because they're no longer stacking. They're only doing 4-turn stacking instead of permanent stacking, right? And then they will get 80% damage reduction for the first 4 turns, and they'll have a scouter up for those 4 turns as well. But then the scouter rolls off, and 40% of that 80% damage reduction rolls off as well. So from that point forward, they might be really, really liable to take some, damage. And I think you might find with this unit that you're kind of forced to transform them just to be able to do extra damage on rotation, or to keep them safe with the extra, instant boost of numbers and stuff, or maybe just the ability to use the scouter to begin with. You might have to transform them a little prematurely, where the, next 4 phases, like let's say, I'm thinking you would probably have to transform them somewhere here. Somewhere in these couple of phases, which means that guaranteed those 4 turns of their massive, impressive looking kit is going to roll off, and then for the end of the fight here, you're not going to have that portion of their kit active anymore, and they might kind of fizzle out. So yeah, that's the main reason why I don't consider them any better than this position here. Okay, so moving down to this next spot, we've got a couple of just fill-in units that are, again, permanent attack and defense stackers. I almost want to put this Piccolo and Gohan in a tier of their own. They just have some really, really solid abilities, right? Not only are they doing the infinite stacking of attack and defense, but then they've got, like, damage reduction in their kit. They've got, like, really, really good dodge chances, things like that. So yeah, I believe it's a thing of, like, above 70% HP, they're going to have 70% damage reduction, and then below that, they're going to get like 1 guaranteed dodge within the turn, and then every subsequent dodge after that is a 50% chance to dodge. And again, on top of their infinite stacking stats. So I think that is going to be a pretty solid unit to potentially use in here. Unfortunately, this is the one unit on the list that I don't actually have myself. Aside from this unit who hasn't even released yet, right? But yeah, so I don't have this unit, so I won't be able to, like, try them out in here, unfortunately, until I do eventually pull them, but I think they could be a really good option. Okay, and then the Krillin and Gohan here, they're going to be decent as well, being an infinite attack and defense stacker, and same thing with the Broly. Both these units have, additionals built into their kit that are going to allow them to stack up decently quickly, and I think they are recent enough EZAs that just their stats are going to look decent, and I think for I would say at least for the first 40 phases, because the fight does ramp up pretty significantly once you get to stage 41 here with the massive, HP pool increase. Obviously, you get the extra charges at this point to get the 3rd turn of damage versus just 2 at this point. But yeah, I think at least up to stage 40, these units would probably be able to hang in there. I think this unit, I'm going to move them up because I think that they really do have the possibility to make it through stage 50. That's kind of going to be my, like, assumption with these top 3 tiers right here, is that these units likely could make it through all the way to stage 50. And then I have much more doubts about basically the rest of the list. So yeah, I think that's pretty accurate here. Okay, so moving down to this next tier, we've got Tech Ultimate Gohan, we have the Tech Transforming Trunks, and then the Tech Kale and Caulifla here. So again, all 3 of them are going to be infinite attack and defense stackers, and coincidentally enough, all 3 of them do have a final transformation that you will be able to use at will, which is going to be, very nice for, like, the very, very end of the fight, just to give you, one of those turns way later on where you need to make sure you do extra damage or something like that. They could be a very viable help at that point. And I imagine that their transformations would look quite busted once you give them, 50 plus turns of stacking, right? So yeah, they could be very, very good options there. Okay, so this next tier down is the first time that I split away, other than Glorio, this is the first time that I split away from units that do infinite stacking. So, in fact, yeah, none of these units here are going to be... Well, okay, you've got the I guess we'll put them up here so it's a little bit easier to differentiate. These 2 units here, so the Tag Switch Goku Frieza, and then the GT boys are going to be infinitely stacking, but not enough, basically. So, like, for the Tag Switch Goku Frieza, they're only going to be stacking attack once you tag switch them into Goku, and there's no defensive stacking. So though there's a lot of defense in the kit, and there's a lot of they do have some like defense buildup within the kit, and they do have a decent bit of damage reduction depending on like the orbs selected. Eventually, I think you'll find that defensively they're going to fall off, and for the very, very end of the fight, they're probably not going to be able to keep you safe because they haven't been stacking at all, right? It's just the offense that's a stacking there. So yeah, and then there's also the weird HP restrictions where you only want the Frieza out when your HP is low, and then you want the Goku out when the HP is high and stuff. So yeah, could be a little bit weird. I don't know if they're going to be the best as far as stacking, but definitely like a viable-ish unit to, throw in at the end of a team. Basically, this tier here is like using these units individually is going to be a better help to your team overall than maybe throwing like one of these lower tier units on that is an infinite stacker, but just overall has so much less power that they're probably not going to be that helpful for you, especially towards the beginning of the fight where you only have the one turn to take the phase down, right? A lot of these units are going to be so weak at the very beginning of the fight that you might just die super early on with them, to where some of these units in this 5th tier might be a little bit more helpful, right? So then, yeah, same thing with the GT boys. They are going to be infinitely stacking attack, and they do have some buildup with stats in their passive as well as damage reduction, but eventually you'll find that the defense just isn't quite enough, and they might get blown out of the water. It is nice, though, that they have a revive mechanic, so if you were to put them into standby, they could potentially get KO'd and revived for you, and then obviously the ultimate Spirit Bomb that they do with that revive attack is going to be a nice help for some damage on any given turn there. But you do have to keep in mind that when you get KO'd and revive, that ends your turn, right? So it would be very wise to make sure you do that with them in slot 3, so that you actually get the power of all the attacks for the rotation before they just get KO'd. Though, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, it's not turn-based, it's charge-based. So maybe, wow, wait, that actually could be something interesting, because it's a charge-based fight, which means, oh, no, okay, yeah, because you select all the charges at the start of the turn, and then if they get KO'd at the beginning of the turn, you still wasted all those charges selecting the orbs, but then you don't get the advantage of, like, the damage from the attacks that you would do. Yeah, so I am correct about that. You would definitely want to have them in slot 3 if you were going to try to revive with them. Okay, so then AGL UI Goku, he is a unit that is going to fizzle out very quickly as far as like the damage support that he is providing. My very first run of the event ever, I did use him on the team, but I suffered from that, right? I ended up getting KO'd because I wasn't able to do enough damage, just because he doesn't provide any of that. But it is worth noting that he will be a defensively viable unit all the way through the very end of the fight. Same thing with Daima Goku here. They both are going to have really, really good dodge chances, but AGL UI Goku especially is going to be the best dodger in the game. So, if you're simply needing that extra bit of defensive support, then, this is someone who you can throw in the way of, the very, very end fights here against, like, Gogeta and Vegito, and then not have to worry about these ridiculous super attacks because he could just straight up dodge them for you. And he is likely to as well, right? Obviously, there is some RNG that applies there, and you do have the very real possibility to just accidentally get caught by one of those attacks. And, we're to the point where, like, even the normals at these stages hit so ridiculously hard that he needs to dodge every single attack. If he gets hit by anything at all, period, probably from, I would say, like, maybe he could survive a normal against Kid Buu, post-super attack. Same thing with, like, Tech UI, maybe. But probably from this point forward, from the Super Saiyan Goku on, if AGL UI gets hit with a single normal attack, you're just dead. There's no surviving that. Definitely not going to happen, right? And then kind of same thing with Daima Goku. He is going to be getting some attack stacking going on, so that would be nice. But other than that, and he is providing a good bit of support to the team as well. And he'll be like a pretty decent slot 1 unit, but again, he's going to suffer from the same thing. And eventually there will be a point where if he gets hit with a normal, especially slot 1, he'll just get absolutely destroyed and you'll be done for. Okay, so then we have the Super EZA STR Gogeta. He is pretty solid post EZA. He's got permanent guard. He's going to have some buildup in his kit. He does offer quite a few attacks per turn, as well as it's pretty easy to get him to guaranteed crits. So he will be providing a lot of damage most of the way through the fight. You're probably not going to see his attack power fizzle out until close to like here, where he's no longer really helping you anymore. But I suppose he still has type advantage against Glorio, so guaranteed crits with type advantage and like 4 super attacks or something could be nice. But one of the really big reasons why I decided to keep him on, or like add him to the list, is because of the attack support that he's going to be providing, right? 40% attack support for any units on rotation is definitely not nothing. Okay, so then we have the 10th anniversary Super Saiyan Blue Evolution Vegeta here. This unit is going to be stacking attack but not defense. His attack will be stacking so much that you are going to definitely be seeing offensive viability from this guy all the way through the end of the fight, definitely. There's no question about that. But the problem is that you're going to get to a point, I would assume, maybe somewhere around here, where his defensive viability is not there anymore. And you'll find that, like, he would just get absolutely demolished by a super attack. Maybe, probably not by normals yet at this point. Maybe the normal attacks would start to catch up with him, like, in these last 3 phases, right? But yeah, so that's something to consider. If you're actually trying to go through and clear the entire event, he's probably going to get you caught at some point. But offensively, he could definitely assist you in getting very, very far, easily through, you know, upwards of stage 40, maybe all the way up to like stage 45. Okay, so then moving down again, we are stepping down in power with this next tier of units. All of these units are infinite stackers here, but there's just a lot of like conditional things with them, right? So the first thing to note is that if you are keeping these units off rotation at all, they're probably not going to get enough attacks, even, you know, with 50 plus turns of fighting, to keep up offensively or defensively. So that's kind of the asterisk with basically every single one of the units left on the list. Their sole, like, base power is not high enough that if you want to depend on them as a stacker, you're probably going to need to keep them on rotation for the entire fight so that they never miss a turn of stacking. And then the other, like, kind of danger alert with that is if you're keeping one of these weaker units on rotation for the entire fight, then that means, especially in the earlier phases where you only have 1 turn to get through it, you have to be very, very careful how you select your attacks and stuff, because they might just end up getting you KO'd very early on, right? Which I suppose isn't the worst thing, because, you know, it doesn't feel that bad to jump back in when you've lost after maybe 20 minutes of fighting versus after, like, 2 hours, right? So yeah, that's something to consider. And then I guess I'm not going to go into super specific detail about a lot of these characters, but there's a couple of things that I wanted to note. So the first thing is that I think that these Xeno Super Saiyans could actually be a really solid idea, just because they're providing such a major attack and defensive support to Vegeta's family and Goku's family, respectively. And you can very easily make team builds where you have basically the entire team is Goku and or Vegeta's family. Especially, like, the 10th anniversary LRs, the new Dokkan Fests, they're both Goku and Vegeta's family because of the tag switch. So both of these units are going to be buffing both of those 10th anniversary LRs. So that could be a really solid, you know, potential strategy there. And then they do have some additionals built into their kit, so they are going to be getting quite a few attacks per turn. Another unit that I wanted to make a specific note about is the Nail here. He does get quite a massive buff to, like, the base stats of his kit if you have a Piccolo on the team. As you'll notice, there's no Piccolo on this list at all. I don't think that there is a Piccolo in the game that's good for this event. So that's one thing that might hurt him pretty significantly, right? Not being able to have that Piccolo around. So it'll just take him a little bit longer to start ramping up. But yeah, definitely something to note there. And then the GT Super Saiyans, honestly, I should probably put it like this, to have them, like, I'm not really scaling within these tiers, they're just kind of whatever, but I really do think that, like, these GT boys are going to be decent. They're, you know, infinitely stacking as well, and they're providing support to Goku or Vegeta's family. So this could be a nice pair for, again, like the 10th anniversary LRs are going to be having some good support from them, but then also their GT characters. So linking them up with the Super Saiyan 3 Goku or with the LR Super Saiyan 4s could be really, really good for providing some of those extra GT links, right? Okay, and then moving down a tier, another kind of cautionary tale would be this Ginyu Force unit. So yeah, the Int Ginyu Force, they will infinitely stack attack pretty easily, but they have some really funky, like, super attack effects, right? Because they're getting a different super attack from, like, 12 to 14 key versus 15 to 17 key, so it's almost like they have a third super attack, right? Because it's not just the 18 key or the 12 key, but then there's that extra attack from 14 to 17 key. That's a big cautionary tale with them, because in order for them to stack defense at all, they have to hit that 14 to 17 key. So you just have to make sure to be very careful about the orbs you select with them to get them to that point. And then even then, when you get there, it's only like a high chance to even proc the extra defensive, like, portion of the kit. So they're probably just not going to be defensively stacking quite as much as you would expect. But if you're able to make it work and the RNG works out well for you, then they could end up being pretty impressive as well. Like, RNG in your favor, I might even put them up here. Or, like, up here. But the fact that it is RNG, like, on a bad run, that's why I'm putting them down here. Because on a bad run, this is about how well they're going to perform. Okay, and then moving down here to this very bottom tier, this is where I got to the point where I was like, okay, time to end the tier list, because I was pulling units that were so, like, these units are so weak turn 1. They are insanely weak. I think you are pretty viable to just get KO'd in the first couple of phases using these units, because you're not going to do enough damage. But they will be able to stack quite impressively over time. So if you're able to just kind of throw in these units, you know, 1 or 2 of them off to the side of your team and not have them be like a main part of the team build, then maybe you could, you know, do something like that with them. But again, you'd probably want to keep them on rotation. And then especially with like the U6 girls, they get so many buffs from having another of the opposite U6 girl on that rotation. So basically, like, both these two, the Tech Khalifa and STR Kale, are going to look a lot better if you keep them on a rotation together. But that just means, again, you have to try and provide enough damage throughout the turn to KO the enemies. So I definitely think it would be an interesting idea to try out, like, a Universe 6 girls team of some kind. So maybe I'll attempt doing that at some point. I do want to try and use a lot of these units in the fight and see if, you know, this is a theoretical tier list, since I haven't really used many of these units on the event yet, right? But yeah, okay, so I think those are all of the, like, big tips and pointers I wanted to give about any of these units, so feel free to try them out yourself. Let me know how you do. I'm sure there are a couple of other units in here that I've missed, as far as, you know, on those stacker lists. I didn't look at every single unit because there were just so many, like, for instance, when you get down here to the lower parts, there's just so many random, like, TURs and just, like, banner units and stuff that might have some, you know, viability, might be keeping up with this event in a similar fashion to some of the other units that I have on rotation, but those were, like, the main ones that I was thinking of for sure. But there are just so many different units to look through, right? And then obviously, as far as every single unit in the game, there are probably a couple of other units that might be considerable. Maybe like AGL Golden Frieza that has the 90% damage reduction might be a decent unit to throw in, right? Just a couple of other examples of units like that aren't stackers but might have some viability for another reason or two. So yeah, could be a couple of other units to consider in here. But that is everyone that I thought would be, like, the most notable. Okay, so with the tier list being finished up, now let's go ahead and, for the last part of the video here, what we'll do is I've actually put together some teams in-game that I think could be pretty viable strategies. If you're having, you know, trouble actually putting together and constructing a team build, then maybe this could be something to help you out. So yeah, without any further ado, let's go ahead and switch over to in-game, and we will take a look at these teams that I've built. Okay, So the very top team here, this is obviously the meta team. This is the singular team that has beat the event the most amount of times. This is the most widespread clear that you're going to see. And in fact, all you would have to do is go and look at the like records list for the event, and you'll probably see this exact team build 4 million times on there by now. And then especially, you know, this team, give or take 1 or 2 units. These last 2 units, people trade out quite frequently for maybe like the AGL Namek Vegeta or the Tech LR Super Saiyan Gogeta, things like that. But yeah, that's probably the best team in the game for the event. So the next team down, what I put together here was the Glorio team. This is what I think is the best version of the Glorio team. So as you can see, it is basically the exact same team with all the 10th anniversary LR buffs and stuff, and then just Glorio as the lead. This is meant to represent the Tech LR Gohan and Piccolo that we talked about earlier. As I mentioned, I don't have them, so I had to fill that in with them. But yeah, that is meant to represent that unit on the team. So yeah, I think that would be a really, really good build. And then this next little slot down, all this is not meant to be a serious build. You would not get very far with this exact build. But this is just an example of like kind of opening your eyes to the fact that the Glorio team is so widespread. There's so many different character options on there that these are a lot of other options that you could choose to like fill in that would still be very viable if you were missing a couple of these units and you weren't able to build this full team build, right? So yeah, some of these would be like some lesser options that you could definitely throw in on that team. Okay, so then here would be an example of like a Universe 6 build that we've put together here. So yeah, it's just, you know, obviously the best leader skill you're going to give yourself is from this guy. And, you know, I suppose you could use like the AGL Gogeta as well, but obviously having double Vegito is really, really helpful, especially for the very end of the fight. So maybe something like this could work. These two at the end, you know, this unit's not stacking offense, so eventually they're not going to be doing anything damage-wise for you, and then this unit doesn't stack defense at all. She will be able to keep up offensively, and probably, aside from the leader here, will be the best offensive unit on the team. But at some point, very early on, the defense is going to wear off and not be, like, that viable because she's not stacking with it, and you're going to have to be solely depending on the dodge capabilities, which obviously is a little bit scary because she is very dependent on like heavy orb selection in order to get a massive amount of dodge. So yeah, there's gonna be a lot of RNG with this team, and I think probably this is incapable of getting through stage 50, but definitely another like idea, right? Okay, and then the next team down here is gonna be, oh, I guess I skipped one. Okay, so the next team down here is gonna be a decent idea. I do actually want to try with this exact team and see how far I can get. The only unit I'm kind of questioning about is the Super Saiyan 3 Goku. Obviously, he would be like a good support still. He is one of the better units for this like event. But basically what I was trying to do here was make it so that every single unit on this team would be getting the buffs from the you know, from the Xeno, Goku, and Vegeta, because everybody here is on Goku family or Vegeta family, right? So yeah, I think that could be a pretty fun build to see how far we get with. And in fact, just to make it a showcase of like how these two units would do in the event, this is probably the team that I'm going to take in there to try that out. Okay, yeah, so ignore this. I just accidentally didn't build a team in that slot. That was a total accident. Okay, so right here, we have an example of like a successor team. So we're able to get this is the only way really that we're able to build one of these meta teams kind of-ish with the Namek Frieza on the team. Because the Namek Frieza is not on any of those main categories, right? None of Glorio's leader skills, and then not on Pure Saiyans or Fuse Fighters or Earth Protecting Heroes. So yeah, the only other option there is to make a successors build. So the one big downside with this team is that you would have to have double Gogeta, which means even if you did want to throw Vegito on this team, you're only going to be able to have one of him and not two for those final phases of the fight, right? So that's something to consider for sure. And then here I just kind of, again, threw in a bunch of other like sub-tier options for that are ones that fit on the team, but obviously you could still buff this out with a bunch of those like 10th anniversary LRs and stuff would be make a much better overall team build. But one unit that I did want to include on here for sure is the Goku Frieza. because that's going to be, of all of the like top tier options that you're going to be bringing in here, this is the unit that's going to be linking up with Dynamic Frieza the best. So that could be a potential, you know, rotation that you use. And that's also why I put these two units here, because I wanted to prioritize, you know, having extreme class units that might link up a little bit better, which obviously Broly usually struggles with because he doesn't have big bad bosses. So he's, you know, not quite linking up as well with like extreme class units, but you wouldn't have that issue with the Int Goku Black here. Okay, and then the last team that I have put together for this event, I think it was the last one, yeah. So the last team that I put together here, this would be an option for like a GT Heroes Fuse Fighter build. So if you wanted to have, you know, the LR Super Saiyan 4s as your leader, you know, just to have the benefit of being able to use one of them as a friend lead as well, this could be a really viable team build for you. So, you know, you've got the Super Saiyan 3 Goku, that's going to be like their best linking partner in the game, and just a really good unit for the event itself. And then you have the GT boys, who are going to be providing a lot of support for, you know, the Goku and Vegeta units. So basically, if you had like them slot 1 and then them slot 2, and then you had these guys rotating on slot 3, then they would be providing the support to these slot 3 units, right? Or, you know, whenever you decided to flop your rotations, then vice versa, right? If you have them slot 2, they'll give them support when they're in slot 3, as far as like link support, and then the passive skill support that they have would work for these 3 units here. So, yeah, lots of fun viability. This might be another team build that I do take in to test out a couple of things, right? First, to see how far you can get with only the 170 leader skill that they're going to be providing, and then also to see if these guys are going to be viable at all to use in there. So there we go. That's basically everything I have for you guys today. I hope that helps, you know, inspire a little bit more motivation for people to try and run this event. And then, you know, just keep in mind that, you know, while everybody is harping about this team being basically the only way to get through, unless you're like maybe using like a really good Glorio team, most of these players are barking from a standpoint of they want to get through stage 50. They want to clear the very, very, very end of the event. But I think that if we step back and realize that, you know, most of the rewards are only up through stage 25 of this event anyway, and it doesn't really ramp up and start to get super difficult until after stage 40, 45, I think a lot of these other team builds could be viable to getting us to those points, right? Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me. Don't forget to check out the links in the description below, and I will catch you guys next time. Peace.